In the 16th century, there was an artist called Giovanni Arcimboldo, and he was a good artist, but then he got this great honor of being appointed to the imperial court as the royal portraitist there. So he had to move from where he was in Italy to Vienna to take up that appointment in 1562. And it was an interesting time because it was the Renaissance, so there was like a rebirth in sort of learning and art and culture in all sorts of ways. So he was surrounded by great thinkers, brilliant botanists, physicists and so on, and writers. And that had an influence, a profound influence on his art. And I'm going to give you one example here now. Just have a look at this painting, this portrait at the moment. I know it is a little bit funny, isn't it? You can see there's grapes in the hair and fruits and vegetables around his face. And it's interesting because initially it looks like he's just having a bit of fun with fruit. But it goes beyond that. One of the things about his great artwork is even those bits of fruits and vegetables are brilliant portraits of the botany of the time. But they also suggest something else, which was quite a theme around Vienna and Europe at that time. And that is that not just that we are what we eat, but that we're products of our own culture. What we consume has an effect on how we come across to others. Here's another painting he did now this is called The Librarian. I think he was partly poking fun. It was only the rich that had books. And he's partly poking fun at them because they didn't read all of them. But also, if they did read them, they're often consumed by what they read. And it had quite a profound effect on their thoughts and what they said and how they came across to people. But that's probably nothing new to us. We're really familiar with the fact that depending on what we listen to, maybe mainstream media, maybe loads of blogs, maybe conspiracy theories, we know how that affects people around us, maybe particularly at this time. People are changed by what they consume in all sorts of different ways. So I wonder if Giuseppe was doing his paintings today, or portraits, instead of books, maybe instead of vegetables, what he would paint people as. I'm sure we've all got different ideas on that. Today's gospel, John the Baptist tells us, prior to these words, produce fruit that shows you've changed your hearts and your lives. And the word produce in that is important because what he's saying is it's not enough for us to be different as disciples. The only way to tell that a human being's heart has changed is when they act differently. Sometimes say the proof is in the pudding. Our face, our appearance to the world reveals what's within our hearts. And the way that John the Baptist does this is when the people say to him, so what shall we do then? It's really practical. Share. Share your clothing, give to the food to the poor. Don't cheat in your jobs. Don't harass innocent people for no reason. In other words, be as kind and loving as a heart that is changed by God demands of us. There has to be external change. But John also knows that that's not something that we can figure out or manage on our own. It has to be done with God in us. I think in a way, Paul's letter to the Philippians complements that. His message is rejoice, be happy, always happy in the Lord. And do you know where Paul was when he wrote that letter? He was in prison. He wrote that letter from prison. How could he exhort all those people to be happy when he was living in the squalor of a dungeon cell? There's only one way that he could have done that. Because he was filled with God's Spirit. We might not be in dungeon cells, although some people watching this at home might feel they can't leave their homes and they might feel trapped and prisoners in one way. Or we might in another by the circumstances of our lives. And yet, still Paul tells us we're called to rejoice. A few lines after that letter, Paul writes at the end of it, not the peace of God be with you, but the God of peace be with you. The only way we can do it is if we've got the God of peace in us. And when we talk about consuming things and then becoming what we consume, what we're here to do today is to consume God, to fill our lives with Jesus in his word and in the Eucharist, so that we can be like him. And really, even then, walking up to communion isn't enough. There has to be a hunger for God, a desire to consume him with our hearts, with all of our lives. It's the only way that Paul did what he could do. It's the only way that we too can be like Jesus.